Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. Texas Democratic House members boycott again the Texas House of Representatives meeting. And for a second day in a row, there is no quorum, blocking Republicans from passing their congressional redistricting plan. President Donald Trump says in an interview that Republicans are entitled to 5 more seats in Texas, and that states which voted Democratic in national elections are already gerrymandered to favor that party. U.S. House Oversight and Reform Committee subpoenas the Justice Department for the complete files on the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Also subpoenas for depositions in that case a dozen former office holders, including Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Merrick Garland, James Comey, Robert Mueller, Jeff Sessions, Loretta Lynch, Bill Barr, and Eric Holder. President Trump looks to sign an executive order to penalize big banks that turn away customers for political reasons. The president claims he was debanked by Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase. The president rules out naming Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as the next Federal Reserve chair. The Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announces a proposed rule to spur development of commercial drones. And the United Nations Security Council holds a meeting on the war between Israel and Hamas after reports that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is deciding whether to move forward with a plan for Israel to take all of Gaza. Story from CBS News. The Texas House reconvened Tuesday afternoon in Austin after Democratic lawmakers fled the state in an effort to block a redistricting vote. Democratic lawmakers were not in attendance, making it the second day in a row the House hasn't met a quorum. The House is going to meet again Friday afternoon in an attempt to make a quorum. Earlier Tuesday morning, Texas Democrats, along with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and the Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin, met to continue the fight against redistricting that could add 5 seats favoring Republicans. Some of the reporting from the CBS News. President Trump was interviewed on CNBC this morning.
How about Texas? Now we're going to do mid-year or midterm gerrymandering based on that's going to be a quid pro quo or something with in blue states. Now, Mr. President, did you?
Well, they did it to us. You know, those blue states that you're talking about. You know, somebody gave a good example. In Massachusetts, I got, I think, 41% of the vote. It's a very, blue state. And yet it's got 100% of Congress, 100%. So I got 41% or something. And yet 100% of Congress in Massachusetts. No, it shouldn't be that way. We should have a couple of Congress people, but we have none. And think of this, 100%. In Illinois, we have probably the dumbest of all governors. Illinois, that guy is really the business is flowing out of his state. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing that Pritzker's doing. He was the black sheep of the family. They threw him out of the business. But in Illinois, what's happened is terrible, what they're doing. And you notice they go to Illinois for safety, but that's all gerrymandered. California's gerrymandered. We should have many more seats in Congress in California. It's all gerrymandered. And we have an opportunity in Texas to pick up 5 seats. We have a really good governor, and we have good people in Texas. And I won Texas. I got the highest vote in the history of Texas, as you probably know. And we are entitled to 5 more seats.
I don't know.
President Donald Trump in a CNBC interview today. Many of the dozens of Texas House Democrats who have left Texas to deny the quorum for the Republicans to pass their new congressional redistricting map have gone to Illinois. And today in Chicago, they held a news conference with the Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker, along with the DNC Chair Ken Martin and a few Democratic U.S. House members from Texas. A reporter asked Martin and Pritzker about what President Trump said in that interview.
And can you please introduce yourself? Yes, of course.
My name's here in Illinois,
yep.
So nice to see everybody. Can you talk a little bit about why do you think President Trump has held back in talking about this issue since making that initial message to Governor Abbott?
Well, he hasn't held back. Just this morning, he said that the Republicans are entitled to these 5 seats, right? And let me just be really, really clear about this. No party is entitled to any district. We have to go out and earn the votes, and that's what a democracy is about. The fact that Donald Trump believes he's entitled to these seats and he's entitled to this unconstitutional power grab should tell you everything you need to know. Listen, at the end of the day, as I said, we're going to keep standing up to this. It's illegal. It's immoral. immoral, it's racist, and look, Donald Trump has talked about it. He's going to continue to talk about it. His first call was to Greg Abbott. They're doing his bidding. It's very clear what they're up to here because they know they're going to lose in 2026.
I'm Olivia with the Chicago Tribune. I have a question for Governor.
Yes, sure.
I believe Trump said as recently as this morning that Illinois is already gerrymandered. I'm curious whether you're any closer now than you were a few days ago to possibly redrawing maps in Illinois, and if you're taking any action to that, such as calling special session of our own here, whether that would be even active for 2026, given that position of the governors today.
Look, I've been really clear that, again, let me repeat, Donald Trump is a cheater. Yeah. So is Governor Greg Abbott.
That's right.
And Texas Republicans are carrying out their will. And if they're going to cheat, then all of us have to take a hard look at what the effect of that cheating is on democracy. And that means we've all got to stand up and do the right thing. So as far as I'm concerned, everything is on the table.
Governor J.B. Pritzker, Democrat of Illinois, and before that, the Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin, part of a news conference in Chicago with Texas House Democrats who have fled Texas. New York Times reporting that Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, asked the FBI on Tuesday to help locate and arrest dozens of Democratic state lawmakers who have left Texas to block the state legislature from voting on a Republican plan that could help the party keep control of Congress after the 2026 elections. The potential use of federal agents to round up the Texas lawmakers who have sought refuge in New York, Illinois, and Massachusetts would be a significant step and could set up a clash between the governors of those Democratic states and the Trump administration. That was the article from the New York Times. At today's news conference in Chicago, Ramon Romero Jr., one of those Texas House Democrats, he chairs the Texas Mexican-American Legislative Caucus, said he is prepared for possible arrest.
So right now there's folks saying that we walked out. And I think everyone behind me will say, we're standing up. And as Texans would say, we're standing tall. There's others that are saying and warning us that they're going to arrest us or make us pay fines. I'll pay that price for America. Yes. And I think everyone behind me would say they would do the same. Right. Yes. That would be a very small price to pay for what we would save for these Americans that have fought so hard and against the maps that aim directly at black and brown voices. Tomorrow marks 60 years since the Voting Rights Act was signed into law, and that law that was born out of sacrifice of people bleeding, marching, and even dying for the right to vote. Right. And now here we are one day before that anniversary, watching Trump try to destroy it. That power grab by Trump and Abbott doesn't just have the goal of getting 5 more seats in Congress. It has another goal, a goal more sinister than that. And that is to make people believe that their vote doesn't really matter. That's why it's all of our fight, just like it was 60 years ago.
Texas State Representative Democrat Ramon Romero Jr. at today's news conference in Chicago. Houston Chronicle writing that Texas House Democrats who fled the state to block GOP redistricting have been very open about their effort, holding press conferences in Chicago and Albany, making the rounds on cable news programs and posting videos about their motivations on social media. They have been less vocal about how they plan to pay for it all. The already costly protest has become even more expensive since 2023, when Republican state lawmakers passed new $500 per day fines for every member who breaks a quorum. Those rules prohibit members from using their campaign accounts to cover the penalties. Democrats are also dealing with Governor Greg Abbott's suggestion on Monday that members who raise money to cover the cost of leaving Texas might be violating bribery laws, though several members have cast doubt on whether that legal theory would hold up in court. That was from a Houston Chronicle article. Texas House Minority Leader Jean Wu was asked about this at the Chicago's news conference.
Yeah, I'm curious about the obsession with how it's being funded. My phone and the phones of every member here have been blowing up nonstop from constituents from people that like I've met like 5 years ago, from people around the country somehow got my number, texting me, "We support you. How can we help?" I have to have our donation link saved to a separate file so I can just go and copy it and paste it in every single time. Who is supporting us? The American people are supporting us.
Texas House Democratic leader, the minority leader, Gene Wu, at a news conference today in Chicago. Back in Austin, Texas, there was another brief House session, and Speaker Dustin Burrows, a Republican, announced that a quorum, again, not present, and therefore no legislative business can be conducted.
Members, may I have your attention? This morning, I met with the leadership of the Texas Department of Public Safety to get a full briefing on their efforts to locate and return the members who are actively trying to thwart the legislature from performing its duties. DPS is actively working to compel their attendance after I signed their civil arrest warrants yesterday, and will continue to do so until those members are back in this chamber. Today, the Disaster Preparedness Committee is meeting to consider 5 priority pieces of legislation. Each will address the catastrophic flooding that has devastated homes and entire communities. That's the kind of important work that is being done in the House. And all elected members should be here representing their districts in those conversations. It is evident to the chair that DPS will need some time to work, and we will try again to make quorum on Friday. If quorum is then made, we will proceed with the very important business of this state. Members, the call of the House remains in force. Under the House rules, the House may adjourn from day to day. While I will call the House to order tomorrow and Thursday in a pro forma session, I will provide written permission to be entered in today's journal for each member who is registered here today as present to leave the chamber and return Friday at 1 p.m. Mr. Guerin moves that the House stand adjourned until 9 a.m. Wednesday. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The House stands adjourned.
Texas House Speaker Dustin Burrows, a Republican, presiding over today's meeting in the House in the state capital, Austin, Texas. Story from NBC News. Congressman Kevin Kiley, Republican from California, is calling on Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, to, quote, show some leadership and end the redistricting, again, quote, chaos that is unfolding in several states across the country. Kiley said in an interview with MSNBC's Chris Jansing, the old saying is that voters should choose their representatives, representatives shouldn't choose their voters. And I think that what's happening right now across the country, and especially in California, is very unhealthy for democracy. Kiley has introduced legislation in the House to nullify any new redistricting maps adopted by states before the 2030 census. That was from NBC News. And this is Washington Today. Story from the Hill. House Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chair James Comey, Republican of Kentucky, issued subpoenas to the Department of Justice and a number of high-profile former government officials, including former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, as his members press for probes into matters surrounding convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The subpoenas come after members of a subcommittee last month voted on a bipartisan basis to subpoena the DOJ for the full, complete, unredacted Epstein files, with 3 Republicans joining the Democratic-led motion, and to subpoena the 10 former U.S. officials, a Republican-led motion that was approved by voice vote. Per the rules of the committee, Comey was compelled to issue the subpoenas, which relate to both Epstein and the case of his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. In a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, Comey directs the DOJ to deliver the documents pursuant to the Epstein subpoena by August 19th. That was from The Hill. Congressman Robert Garcia, Democrat of California, is the committee's ranking member. He was on CNN today saying he's glad the subpoena for the files has been issued.
We're obviously very supportive and glad that the actual subpoena was actually out today. This is something, of course, that Democrats forced a vote on just a couple of weeks ago, and we had the bipartisan support of a few Republicans coming over and essentially voting for our motion. What's really important is that Chairman Comer, in conversations with us, made it clear that we want these files immediately. So the DOJ has now 2 weeks to send over. It's not just files, it's documents, it's videos, it's other materials. The DOJ needs to comply with the subpoena. We expect this subpoena to be complied to. That is in the law. And so we're expecting a response from them very soon. This is a win for the American public and transparency. And most importantly, this is important to center the victims and to get justice for them.
Congressman Robert Garcia, Democrat from California, ranking member on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, today on CNN. And the chair, James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, posting today on X, the House Oversight Committee is compelling the following individuals to appear for depositions through issued subpoenas. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, October 9th. Former President Bill Clinton, October 14th. Former U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, October 2nd. Former FBI Director James Comey, October 7th. Former U.S. Attorney General William Barr, August 18th. Former U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, August 26th. Former U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, August 28th. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller, September 2nd. Former U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, September 9th. And former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, September 30th. That was the post from Congressman Comer. The congressman was interviewed on Sunday in Kentucky, his home state, at the Fancy Farm picnic about another breaking news story on this, why he is postponing an interview with former Epstein girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in prison for sex trafficking.
You guys have a deposition coming up with Ghislaine Maxwell. What are you looking to get out of that specifically?
Well, first of all, I think every American has two questions about the Epstein saga. First of all, who was on the Epstein list, if there was one? If there's no official list, who all frequently visited Epstein Island? Secondly, was the government involved? Did the government know? Was the government spying on people? Those are the questions I think every American has. Now, what's happened in the last few days, Maxwell's attorneys have sent us a letter and said they request that we delay the deposition until after the Supreme Court rules on her appeal. That could be before August 11th. That's when I'm supposed to go to Florida to depose her. We don't know when the Supreme Court's going to rule on that. It could be any day now. But she said if we do it before the Supreme Court rules on her appeal, then she's going to plead the Fifth. So I don't see any need in going down there and her pleading the Fifth. We want to hear from her. I think the American people have a lot of questions. Congress has tasked me with the job to get the answer, so we're going to do that. We're working with her attorneys in a sincere manner to try to get down there as quick as possible.
What do you believe about Thomas Massie's efforts to get a vote to specifically force the DOJ to act here?
Yeah, well, I think most people in Congress want to know what the government has on the Epstein files, and I think not only are members of Congress in both parties curious, their constituents are curious. My son plays baseball. I go to baseball fields all over the place. These aren't political people that go to baseball games. And the first question they ask me is, hey, what's the deal with the Epstein list? Who's on the Epstein list and things like that? So every member of Congress is hearing from back home, can you all get the truth about Epstein? So I think that he's no different than other members of Congress. Now, my committee's voted for us to do basically what Thomas has asked, and that's to subpoena the documents and to depose Maxwell, and that's what we're going to do. The problem right now is she's got her appeal before the Supreme Court. Hopefully the Supreme Court will rule, and we'll be able to roll in there very soon.
Congressman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, chair of the Oversight Committee at the Fancy Farm picnic in Kentucky on Sunday. Axios writing today that President Trump's former Labor Secretary Alex Acosta was not one of the former government officials subpoenaed Tuesday by the House Oversight Committee over the Jeffrey Epstein probe. As a federal prosecutor in 2008, Acosta approved a highly controversial non-prosecution agreement that allowed Epstein to serve minimal time in prison and shut down the federal investigation into his alleged sex trafficking ring, reporting from Axios. This is Washington Today. Debanking, begins a Yahoo Finance article, is back in the spotlight this week after President Trump said Tuesday that the country's two largest U.S. banks, JPMorgan Chase and Bank of America, denied him as a customer. For years, Republicans have claimed that U.S. banks have denied accounts to certain customers for political reasons. Crypto companies have warned more recently that they weren't permitted to get banking services during the Biden era. The president's comments came in response to a Wall Street Journal report late Monday stating that the White House is preparing to draft a related executive order around debanking that would fine banks found discriminating against customers on political grounds. Both of these giant lenders and their CEOs have denied debanking customers on political grounds. That was from Yahoo Finance. President Trump spoke about this in the CNBC interview this morning.
I had hundreds of millions. I had many accounts loaded up with cash. I was loaded up with cash, and they told me, "I'm sorry, sir, we can't have you. You have 20 days to get out." I said, "You got to be kidding. I've been with you for 35, 40 years." They said, and I mean, I had all this. I didn't know what to do with it. And I went to, and you could ask him. Maybe he's not going to admit it. So I said, I was informed by my people that we have to get out of Chase Manhattan. That's Jamie and J.P. Morgan Chase. So I said, I can't believe it. Well, I was never in this situation before. I've never had anything like it. And it's not like, gee, you defaulted on a loan. Geez, if I could understand that, that's different. But there's no default. I mean, there's nothing but cash. I have a really great company. And then what happens is I call up Bank of America routinely because when I was president, this was after I got out, by the way, I call up Bank of America routinely, and I speak to him, and I speak to a couple of people, and they have zero interest. Brian was kissing my ass when I was president, and when I called him after I was president to deposit $1 billion plus and a lot of other things, more importantly to open accounts, which banks always like. They like accounts because they get interest-free, the overnights and things, there are a lot of reasons for it, but they like accounts. I had hundreds of accounts, and he said, we can't do it. No, we can't do it. So I went to another one. I ended up going to small banks all over the place. I mean, I was putting 10 million here, 10 million there, did 5 million, 10 million, 12 million. I have them all over the place, the craziest thing. And it's lucky I even had them. They were doing me a favor. And that's because the banks discriminated against me very badly. And I was very good to the banks. I had the greatest economy in the history of our country when I was president. And by the way, our economy now will blow that away, and you see it happening. But our economy now, because we're a rich country again, because of our trade deals, we've become a rich country again. But no, they totally discriminate against, I think me maybe even more, but they discriminated against many conservatives. I told that story and sitting around tables with other people that were conservative or Trump supporters. I think the word might be Trump supporters more than conservative. And I believe what they did is they went to the regulators. Banks are not afraid of anything but a regulator. They're regulators and their wives. They're more afraid of their wives than the regulators. But the group they're really afraid of is bank regulators. And I believe that Biden or Kamala, and I don't think they're smart enough to do it, but the people that are surrounding the beautiful Resolute desk, the high IQ people that are radical left, I believe they told the banking commission, the bankers, that the banking regulators, do everything you can to destroy Trump. And that's what they did. And guess what? I'm president. How did that happen?
President Donald Trump interviewed today on CNBC. He was also asked during this interview about his search for a new Federal Reserve chair to replace Chair Jerome Powell when his term expires next year. The president said he has some names in mind, and he also said that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will not be among them.
Who would you replace him with? I know you watch the show occasionally, and we had an extended interview with one of the prospective replacements, Kevin Warsh. Were you watching that day? Or
I was. He's very good. He's very good. He's very good. Sometimes they're all very good until you put them in there, and then they don't do so good. But a lot of them, I think he's a very good guy. I think I say Kevin and Kevin. Both Kevins are very good. And there are other people that are very good, too. But,
Kevin's like Karens. I don't know if that's good.
A lot of times, they're very good. Like this character that we have in there now, Jerome Too Late Fell. He was very good. He said, "Sir, I'll keep interest rates so low. I'm a low interest rate person, sir." You could hardly hear him talking over the desk.
Is Warsh
somebody that worked for him? He was a big fan of his. Not a fan of his. He hardly knew him, but he wanted him so badly. I did somebody a favor. I put him in there. No, he's too late. He's too late. That name will stick to him.
Can you handicap it at all? Who you're, or you won't know? When will you know? And when will you announce it?
I think the two Kevins are doing well, and I have two other people that are doing well. Look, it's in the end there are numerous people that are qualified. Everyone on your phone right now, in terms of at your beautiful studio, would be very qualified, in my opinion. You guys are better than most of the people that do it for a living. But I watched a lot, actually. No, I think that it'll be one of four people.
Are the other
I'm going to make the decision soon. And don't forget, we have somebody that left early, which was a pleasant surprise. We have a woman that left early. She announced 2 days ago that she's leaving, and I'm going to be announcing that very shortly, too. That will be, most likely it'll be for the 4 months, for the short period of time. But a lot of people say that when you do that, why don't you just pick the person who's going to head up the Fed? That's a possibility, too.
President Trump, you said there are four names. There are two other names that have been mentioned in the press. One is Governor Waller. The other is the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Are those the four that you're considering?
Well, I love Scott, but he wants to stay where he is. I'll take him off because I asked him just last night, is this something you want? Nope, I want to stay where I am. He actually said, I want to work with you. It's such an honor. I said, that's very nice. I appreciate that. But no, Scott wants to do what he's doing. He's doing a great job.
President Donald Trump interviewed on CNBC today. He mentioned the two Kevins, and one of them is Kevin Warsh, who is a former Federal Reserve governor. The other one, Kevin Hassett, who is a current White House economic advisor. Wall Street today, the Dow down 61, NASDAQ down 137, S&P down 30. CNBC writing that President Trump told Squawk Box today, part of that interview, that planned tariffs on pharmaceuticals imported into the U.S. could eventually reach up to 250%, the highest rate he has threatened so far. He said he will initially impose a small tariff on pharmaceuticals, but then in a year to a year and a half maximum, he'll raise that rate to 150% and then to 250%. The CNBC article notes the president has repeatedly threatened and then changed course on tariff proposals, so there's no guarantee he'll eventually set pharmaceutical tariffs at the 250% rate. Also, during that interview, President Trump said he is going to unveil new tariffs on semiconductors and chips as soon as this week. On trade, Reuters writes that the U.S. trade deficit narrowed in June on a sharp drop in consumer goods imports, and the trade gap with China shrank to its lowest in more than 21 years, the latest evidence of the imprint on global commerce President Donald Trump is making with sweeping tariffs on imported goods. The overall trade gap narrowed 16% in June to $60.2 billion, the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis said on Tuesday. That was from Reuters. From AP, a new federal rule proposed Tuesday would make it easier for companies to use drones over longer distances out of the operator's site without having to go through a cumbersome waiver process. The federal government had already approved 657 waivers to allow companies such as Amazon and major utilities to do this in certain circumstances, but the waiver process made it difficult. Again, that was from AP. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy made the announcement of the new proposed regulation at a news conference at the department headquarters in Washington.
This department, along with the FAA, understands how important unmanned aircraft systems are for the 21st century. It's going to change the way that people and products move throughout our airspace. And again, so you may change the way you get your Amazon package. You may get a Starbucks cup of coffee from a drone. The way you get your products will fundamentally change. But what's even more important than that is the impact that it's going to have on manufacturing, on farming, on energy production, filmmaking, medical delivery. Industry needs this rule to make sure they can use this technology that's going to allow them to do business more efficiently and effectively. And I think it's only right that America lead, because we have led in aviation since the very beginning, from the Wright brothers to Chuck Yeager, Pan Am, TWA, the jet age, all American. We are now going to also lead in the drone space as well. And so what we're here to announce today, and Administrator Bedford is going to go into some more details, but we are announcing a new rule to normalize beyond visual line of sight, or BVLOS as it's called. operators in the past would have to get individual waivers to operate these drones. Very complicated. They were issued on a case-by-case basis. And because of that complication, I don't think we saw the innovation that we should have in America. So with this rule, we are going to eliminate that prior process, and the approval will be done in a far different way. The rules are going to completely change in the way that drone use is going to be approved. And what this is going to do is, again, allow our innovators and businesses to continue to create and innovate and change the way our industry works with the use of these drones.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy at today's news conference in Washington. More from the Associated Press article. Drones for commercial and recreational purposes have become increasingly popular in the United States. According to the FAA, there are currently 822,000 registered drones in the country. Of those, 433,000 are for commercial purposes. The FAA expects the commercial drone market to double next year. While multiple American companies make commercial drones, China controls 90% of the market. The FAA and DOT will partner with TSA to ensure that operations supervisors and flight coordinators are properly vetted, Duffy said. That was from Associated Press. Story from Reuters, the U.S. could require bonds of up to $15,000 for some tourist and business visas under a pilot program launched in 2 weeks, a government notice said on Monday, an effort that aims to crack down on visitors who overstay their visas. The State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce mentioned this in her opening statement at her news conference.
Today, the State Department published a temporary final rule in the Federal Register. I know that sounds kind of bureaucratic-like for everyone watching at home. This is to implement a visa bond pilot program under the Immigration and Nationality Act, consistent with Executive Order 14159, beginning August 20th. Nationals of Malawi and Zambia applying for B1, B2 business and tourist visas will be required to post a bond of up to $15,000. This targeted common sense measure reinforces the administration's commitment to U.S. immigration law while deterring visa overstays.
State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce at her news conference. And some other news today about immigration and border security. From Fox News, the Department of Justice identified nearly 36 cities and states across the country on Tuesday that it said were sanctuaries for illegal immigrants, and warned that it planned to take legal action against more of those jurisdictions. And from Axios, arrests by U.S. immigration agents dropped by nearly 20% in July amid the backlash to President Trump's push to dramatically boost the number of detentions, according to new data that the Trump administration disputes. The decline followed protests over the waves of raids by masked immigration agents in June, particularly in Southern California, that led to court orders that have hindered some ICE operations, at least for now. ICE agents booked on average 990 arrests per day from July 1st to July 27th, according to data collected by the nonpartisan Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse. That was down from an average of 1,224 daily arrests in June, and well short of senior White House advisor Stephen Miller's stated goal of at least 3,000 immigration arrests per day. That was from Axios. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Past president, why are you doing this? This is outrageous.
This is a kangaroo court.
This fall, C-SPAN presents a rare moment of unity, Ceasefire, where the shouting stops and the conversation begins. Join Political Playbook Chief Correspondent and White House Bureau Chief Dasha Burns as host of Ceasefire, bringing two leaders from opposite sides of the aisle into a dialogue to find common ground. Ceasefire, this fall on the network that doesn't take sides, only on C-SPAN.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. New York Times reporting that Israel sought to push back against its growing isolation over starvation in Gaza on Tuesday by allowing some private businesses to restart importing goods from the enclave as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu weighed the next steps In the nearly 2-year war against Hamas, Israel has faced growing international condemnation over the conditions in Gaza, where more than 1 in 3 people are not eating for days in a row, according to the UN's World Food Program. Many aid agencies and countries, including some of Israel's traditional allies, blame Israel's policies for the hunger crisis. In recent weeks, Israeli officials have sought to show that they are making efforts to allow aid into Gaza, pausing fighting in some areas, and designating secure routes for convoys. That was from the New York Times. The United Nations Security Council met today at the request of Israel to discuss the hostages still held by Hamas in Gaza, and a relative of one of the hostages provided testimony.
Mr. President, members of the Security Council, distinguished delegates, my name is Eli David, and I am speaking before you today not as a politician or a diplomat, but as a brother. My younger brother, Eviatar David, along with Guy Gilboa Dalal and 48 other hostages, are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. Eviatar is the kindest person I know. I learned from him how to be a better son. He is shy, but full of life. He has the soul of a musician. He has played the guitar since he was 10, and we play together every week. I miss his smile, and I miss his hug, and I just want to see him hug my parents. Eviatar was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival. At the age of 22, he went there to celebrate life, to dance, to enjoy the music he loves. Music is a very big part of who he is. Since that day, my brother and the other hostages have endured an unimaginable nightmare. This is not just a figure of speech. Their lives are truly hanging by a thread. We now know from medical reports and other indications that Eviatar, Guy, and the others are the brink of death. They may only have days left to live. Days. That is how urgent that is.
Eli David is speaking remotely to the United Nations Security Council in New York City. Times of Israel writing that the United Nations Office for Project Services has published data showing that since the resumption of humanitarian aid deliveries to Gaza on May 19th and up until August 5th, a total of 2,604 aid trucks were collected by the UN after entering the Strip. Of those, 2,309 did not reach their intended destinations inside the enclave. According to the organization, this was due to the trucks being intercepted either peacefully by hungry people or forcefully by armed actors during transit in Gaza. This accounts for 88% of all trucks. That was from the Times of Israel. Also speaking today at the United Nations Security Council meeting, Amar Benjama, the Algerian ambassador to the UN.
The call of humanity is not a choice. It is a sacred duty. Every human being, regardless of gender, color, creed, or border, civilians and soldiers alike, as Mr. Eviatar David, deserve to be treated humanly and to live with dignity. We do not weigh lives on scales of interest. There are no double standards in our moral compass. What we ask for the Palestinian people, we ask for all people. And Algeria holds the right to food as sacred. It's not a privilege, it is a right enshrined in Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The right of everyone to an adequate standard of living. a right to food, a right to dignity, a right to life. We have long warned of the catastrophe in Gaza. We have echoed repeatedly the plights of a Palestinian starving people. We have joined the calls made by nearly every voice on earth, except a few. And today, this meeting is called by the Israeli occupying power, who blatantly denied the famine in Gaza. The same occupying power that cut off food, water, electricity, and medicine in Gaza. The same power that on July 29th was condemned by United Nations experts.
Amar Benjama is Algeria's ambassador to the United Nations, speaking at today's UN Security Council meeting in New York City. Story from The Guardian: an Israeli Security Cabinet meeting, which had been expected to discuss Benjamin Netanyahu's call for the full occupation of Gaza, has been postponed amid mounting tensions over whether the plan is feasible. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce asked about this.
I'd like to speak a little bit about Gaza. The Israeli Prime Minister had a cabinet meeting earlier. They're settling on a new plan for Gaza, which, according to certain reports, would mean reoccupying all of Gaza. What is the State Department's position on that? Would you support an occupation of all of Gaza?
Well, of course, you know what we're focused on still, getting the hostages out after what we saw with videos over the last couple of days. It is a reminder to people about the evil that has been running this terror operation in Gaza via, of course, through Hamas. What I can tell you is that we would refer you in that instance regarding Israel's plans to the government of Israel. And regarding that reporting, again, reporting is one thing, real plans might be another. We are not in the business of interpreting statements from foreign governments when and if they're made. We do remain focused on freeing the hostages, including the remains of 2 Americans, and ensuring that Hamas never rules Gaza again.
Tammy Bruce, the State Department spokesperson, at her news conference in Washington. This is Washington Today. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff begins an ABC News article is expected to travel to Russia later this week. The president told reporters on Sunday in a bid to secure an elusive ceasefire deal where people stop getting killed, according to the words of the president. Witkoff will travel to Moscow on either Wednesday or Thursday, Trump told reporters. Witkoff heads to Russia amid building frustration in the White House, with 6 months of diplomacy under Trump having failed to achieve a peace deal or even a ceasefire to end Moscow's full-scale invasion of its neighbor, which began in February 2022. Last month, Trump issued a 50-day ultimatum to Russian President Vladimir Putin, threatening sanctions and tariffs, including secondary sanctions on top customers for Russian energy exports like China and India, if the Kremlin failed to agree to the ceasefire. Last week, the president cut the window to 10 days, citing continued Russian drone and missile strikes on Ukraine. The 10-day deadline is set to expire on Friday. That was from ABC News. Oksana Markova, Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., was in Washington today at the Atlantic Council talking about one aspect of the war in Ukraine: Russia stealing art and other museum exhibits and artifacts, bombing cultural heritage sites. The program was titled Examining Russia's Assault on Ukraine's Cultural Heritage.
We all know what to do. These horrible crimes all call for actions. These horrible crimes require stronger sanctions, require our joint efforts in order to stop the war first and bring peace and then bring justice, but also work tirelessly, all of us, in all the areas that we can in order to bring them back. And that's why this event is so important, and that's why everything the coalition does is so important, because every artifact matters, every painting matters not only to Ukraine, it matters to all of us, because you know, this 8,000 years old artifact, which was found in 1930 by a very famous Ukrainian archaeologist and scientist Mykola Makarenko, who was excavating one of the biggest sites in Europe of the grave site of this old people from the 6th century before Christ, where the largest number of the grave sites, including the children's grave sites from that time, were found, and this has been found on the child grave. And whether it was a toy or it was a totem to save, but this is something that we Ukrainians share with the world. You know, this is something that belongs to all of us. And I think only all of us coming together, we can save this and also save Ukrainians who are under attack now and preserve peace and ultimately restore the international law, which should matter to all of us. Because if Russia can do it to us, then they can do it to anyone else, or anyone else with the same horrible ideas could do it to anyone else. And that's not the world in which we all would like to live. So thank you so much for finding time to come to listen to this. Thank you to everyone who are online with us. And I look forward to a very interesting and very important conversation that we will have today. Thank you.
Oksana Marakova, Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., opening up a program at the Atlantic Council in Washington on, as it's titled, Examining Russia's Assault on Ukraine's Cultural Heritage. As an AP story, Russia has declared that it no longer considers itself bound by a self-imposed moratorium on the deployment of nuclear-capable intermediate-range missiles, a warning that potentially sets the stage for a new arms race as tensions between Moscow and Washington rise again over Ukraine. In a statement Monday, the Russian Foreign Ministry linked the decision to efforts by the U.S. and its allies to develop intermediate-range weapons and preparations for their deployment in Europe and other parts of the world. It specifically cited U.S. plans to deploy Typhoon and Dark Eagle missiles in Germany starting next year. That was from AP. And finally, on C-SPAN Radio's Washington Today, as USA Today puts it, President Donald Trump made a surprise trip to a place that might be a first for a president, the roof of the White House. Trump took a stroll atop the West Wing's colonnade on August 5th, fielding questions from reporters as he scoped out projects he's undertaking on the property, including a future 90,000-square-foot ballroom expansion for the South Lawn announced last week. Trump was joined by White House officials and James McCreary, the architect hired for the ballroom expansion. Trump did not say when asked whether he was considering additional renovations. That was from USA Today. Here's how it sounded as reporters shouted questions from the ground level. President Trump on top of the White House West Wing colonnade answering reporters who were in the White House driveway below. After a little more walking around and speaking with the people who were with him, there were some final questions from the reporters. Again, this from the USA Today article. When a reporter asked the president what he's planning to build next, Trump jokingly responded, nuclear missiles.
Mr. President, what do you want to build? What are you trying to build? Sir, do you approve nuclear missiles? Say more missiles? Are you building missiles? What? Come on, Dad. Do you approve of Netanyahu taking over all of Gaza, sir?
said nuclear missiles.
They have gold leaf on them, sir.
At the White House today, reporters standing in the driveway, the president on the roof. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington. Emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.